Coming up on Talking Points, a battle at the southern border. Why Texas and federal officials are fighting over a controlled entry port.
And Ohio lawmakers override its governor's veto on landmark legislation towards trans youth. We have the latest on the bill and what impact it will have on the country as a whole.
Donald Trump cruised to victory last week in the New Hampshire primaries. Talk about his victory speech and what it could mean for the race. All that and more. Talking Points starts right now.
Good evening and welcome into Talking Points. I'm Ericka Love.
And I'm Chilekasi, Adele. We start our show tonight with an update in the Middle East. 3 U.S. Army soldiers are dead and more than 40 service members injured after a drone attack Sunday on a small U.S. outpost in Jordan. This marks the first time U.S. troops have been killed by enemy fire in the Middle East since the beginning of the Israel-Hamas war.
This killing is a significant escalation in an already precarious situation. President Biden vowing to hold those who did it responsible, also saying that the U.S. will do it at a time and manner of its choosing. He says that whilst facts are still being gathered, quote, "We know it was carried out by radical Iran-backed militant groups operating in Syria and Iraq," end quote.
Iran denied any involvement in the attack, calling the claims, quote, baseless. These killings also come as the U.S. and Iraq are expected to begin talks about the future of U.S. military presence in the country.
We turn now to a looming issue at the border. Texas officials seizing a portion of the southern border on Friday. Here with the latest on the standoff between state and federal officials is Benjamin Schiller.
Battle between American officials on U.S. soil.
Joe Biden deliberately has caused this invasion of Texas and the United States.
Then they should talk to their senators and their congressmen.
Texas officials seizing a part of the U.S.-Mexico border on Friday. Its governor declaring it Operation Lone Star.
Texas has a right as a state to stop criminals from coming into our state. And Joe Biden actually does have an option here. Joe Biden's option is to enforce the laws of the United States and stop this illegal entry.
And the White House is getting ready for a battle, but the president saying this weekend in a statement that he would shut down the border if Congress sends him a deal. The president saying what's been negotiated would, if passed into law, be the toughest and fairest set of reforms to secure the border we've ever had in our country, adding it would give me as president a new emergency authority to shut down the border when it becomes overwhelmed. And just last month, border officials reported encountering more than 300,000 migrants at the southern border. The White House and Senate are currently working on a deal. However, Speaker Mike Johnson says that bill will be dead on arrival when it reaches the House chamber. Reporting for Talking Points tonight, I'm Benjamin Schiller.
Benjamin Schiller, thank you. Let's go to Ohio now, which just recently passed legislation affecting the healthcare and athletic participation of trans youth. Talking Points analyst Ben Bassick has been following the latest for us. So Ben, what kind of impact will this have and when is this bill going to go into effect?
So following the bill's timeline, its effects will begin in late April. The Ohio Senate voted this past Thursday to override Governor Mike DeWine's veto on a bill that will restrict medical care for transgender minors. The bill will also block transgender girls from competing on high school and collegiate athletic teams. This is a two-pronged bill with those pieces of legislation introduced separately, then combined at the state level. It passed with a supermajority in the state Senate and House and was then vetoed by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. DeWine's veto was a move against his fellow Republican colleagues at the time, forcing the following statement. He said, "Were I to sign House Bill 68 or were House Bill 68 to become law, Ohio would be saying that the state, that the government knows better what is best for a child than the two people who know that child the best, the parents." That veto has now been overridden and minors will be prevented from getting any kind of gender-affirming care come late April. That care includes hormone therapy, surgeries, puberty blockers, and restrictions on mental health care without parent or guardian consent.
It's interesting to see a Republican governor move against his GOP colleagues. Ben, how are lawmakers on each side of the aisle reacting to Governor DeWine's veto last month?
Yeah, so Democrats celebrated and Republicans were quite disappointed. We saw arguments on both sides of the issue discussed this past Thursday morning for about an hour before a vote took place. Here's some of what was said.
Outlawing all trans in the state of Ohio? We're just asking you to say, wait till you're 18. Wait till you have the ability to make the decision with your unmature mind to give that a break.
That was Republican State Senator Steve Huffman arguing on the basis of age and maturity when it comes to trans health care. Now, we saw opposite arguments on the Democratic side from state senators like Paula Hicks Hudson, who argued in favor of bodily autonomy and personal health care choice. Now, Governor DeWine justified his veto, saying he drew the line at surgery, but was not so much concerned with trans participation in youth sports. He has since introduced his own executive order that would ban surgery for minors. Regardless, now all gender-affirming care will be affected come late April.
And Ben, it also looks like DeWine used a rather conservative argument as well, but let's talk about the broader picture, right? We've seen almost 24 states introduce legislation restricting transgender health care. Election year, obviously, what are we watching for in the year ahead?
Yeah, so looking at this map here, these restrictions are being passed in a lot of the South and encroaching onto parts of the Midwest. Now, those dark orange states have bans on best practice medication and surgical care for trans youth. Those states with shields on them have shield laws that protect access to trans health care. Now, 23 states have passed those trans health care bans, 20 of which were approved this last year. More states are imposing restrictions on trans adults now, with 10 states altering the definition in state law of the word sex based on reproductive ability. Now that changes how trans individuals access identity documents like passports and driver's license, but also things like access to public restrooms. So it's something we're going to be looking at, especially going into an election year within a swing state like Ohio.
Ben Bassick, thank you. After the break, we will take a deep dive into former President Trump's victory speech in New Hampshire last weekend. Stay tuned.
Welcome to an excellent episode of Live from Studio B.
For the love, the kindness, the support, and a great night here tonight. Thank you so much.
That was Nikki Haley in New Hampshire Tuesday night, striking a triumphant tone after her 43% finish in that state's primary. Haley lost to former President Donald Trump by about 11 points.
But she fared better in the Granite State than she did in the Iowa caucuses 2 weeks ago tonight. So this is the big question for Nikki Haley. With Trump winning both early states by double digits, does she still have a path to the nomination? And what has Trump been saying about his former UN ambassador? Talking Points analyst Luke Radel joins us now with the latest on the narrowing primary as Nevada nears. Luke, good evening.
Good evening, Ericka and Chile. I got the chance to be front row in Nashua on Tuesday night for Donald Trump's victory rally. The GOP frontrunner had some choice words for rival Nikki Haley in one of the angrier winning speeches that I've ever heard.
And she was up and I said, wow, she's doing like a speech like she won. She didn't win, she lost. I can go up and I can say to everybody, oh, thank you for the victory, it's wonderful, or I can go up and say, who the hell was the imposter that went up on the stage before and claimed a victory? She did very poorly, actually. I find in life you can't let people get away with bull, okay? You can't. You just can't do that.
Now, if you didn't follow what Trump was saying there, he seemed big mad about the fact that a candidate would come out on election night and claim victory in a race that they had actually lost. Does that sound familiar to you?
We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election.
Now, obvious hypocrisy aside, Trump has ramped up his rhetoric against his lone Republican challenger in recent days, writing on Truth Social that anyone who still supports Nikki Haley will be, quote, permanently barred from MAGA. The Haley team responded by selling 15,000 t-shirts with the phrase barred permanently in all caps. On the trail, in what she calls her sweet home state of South Carolina, Haley has sharpened her attacks against the frontrunner in recent days. Though if you listen closely, you can hear the echoes of Trump's unsuccessful critics in the 2016 race.
Donald Trump was totally unhinged. Unhinged. He threw a temper tantrum out on stage, seriously. Threw a total temper tantrum.
He was having a meltdown. First, he had this little makeup thing applying makeup around his mustache because he had one of those sweat mustaches. Then he asked for a full-length mirror. I don't know why, because the podium goes up to here, but he wanted a full-length mirror. Maybe to make sure his pants weren't wet. I don't know. Then,
No matter what Donald Trump thinks, he can't bully his way to the White House. It's not going to work.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen. And I do have the strength.
So now the question for Nikki Haley is, can she be more successful than Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush, who you just saw, were in taking on Donald Trump? And will this two-person race of Trump v. Haley work to her advantage? She has till February 24th to prove the naysayers wrong, surprise the GOP establishment, and further enrage her former boss. Guys, back over to you.
Thank you, Luke. And speaking of that pivotal February 24th deadline, South Carolina will be a monumental primary for Nikki Haley. Talking Points analyst Noah Gutfleish is here to give us a preview of what Haley could see in her home state.
Thank you. The South Carolina primary on February 24th is usually a competitive race, but that doesn't seem to be the case this year. Former President Donald Trump is leading by at least 30 points in polls, despite his only notable opponent, Nikki Haley, being the former governor of South Carolina. While Haley could be competitive against Trump many of the state's politicians have endorsed Trump instead. Why? Well, there are a couple of reasons for Haley's polling. The states have a large population of non-college educated white voters who Trump has done very well with, and also South Carolina's Republican electorate is also strongly evangelical, like many southern states, which it seems that Trump is doing well with in the primary as opposed to in 2016. The electorate is not strong for Haley as opposed to New Hampshire, which could explain some of her struggles. But it seems that Haley's real struggle is that South Carolina Republicans don't have much of a connection with her. She always was on shaky ground with the Republicans there, since she ran as a Tea Party candidate in 2010, but governed more moderately. Haley also made the government more transparent, which angered some state lawmakers in South Carolina. And the former governor being absent from South Carolina politics for 7 years has created a disconnect from politicians there, which goes to show how Trump has gotten so many endorsements in the state.
Noah, can you explain to us why have many South Carolina politicians backed Trump in general over Haley?
Well, there's many reasons for that. One is that Trump has done some favors for those politicians. For example, Henry McMaster, when he became governor because Trump promoted Haley to ambassador of the UN. Tim Scott is a potential vice president running mate for Donald Trump, so it's possible that he wants to be on his good side and get the spot. And also many representatives Trump has endorsed previously, and really the only notable politician in South Carolina who's endorsed Haley was close to her and has and likes that she was an outsider candidate when she got into South Carolina politics.
Well, no, Nikki Haley, somebody definitely signaling that, at least for now, she's not going away, she's not going anywhere. But, you know, South Carolina will come and go. If she does lose, which right now it looks like that may be the case, what should we expect during this primary and potentially after?
Well, the polling just looks dire for Haley. She's going to likely get crushed. So the question is, what happens after that? Well, then there's Super Tuesday. If she doesn't drop out after South Carolina, then the path for her is still just very slim and frankly almost non-existent. Because if she can't even get close in her home state, it seems like she won't have the delegates and Trump is going to be the nominee.
We'll leave it there. Noah, thank you so much. Coming up on Talking Points, over 20 million Americans may be at risk of increased internet cost. We'll have the latest on the Affordable Connectivity Program after the break.
Jason, let's go see your room.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Hey, welcome back to Talking Points. Well, more than 20 million people could see their internet rates jump. The Affordable Connectivity Program helps provide people across the country with access to the internet, but the program is likely to run out of funding in April. Talking Points analyst Alex Burstein joins us now. Alex, you know, there are some people on this campus and the off-campus neighborhood that could end up losing their benefits as well.
CDC is saying that 1 in 6 households could lose broadband internet access over the next couple of months as the ACP runs out of money. This is a program that came out of the 2021 infrastructure bill. That was a $1 trillion bill, $14.2 billion of which went to this ACP program. As you see, 23 million households. But what exactly is the ACP? Well, households who qualify have $25 to $70 off a month of their internet bill, and also it provides discounts to first-time purchases of either tablets or computers. The problem, though, there's not much more money out of that $15.2 billion. 1 in 6 households, that's a big number right now. April is the projected date for the money running out, so they're stopping applications next month. But once that money comes out, all households will immediately lose the benefit. So whether they've been receiving them this whole time or receiving them starting in the next couple of weeks, they will no longer get the benefits for the upcoming few months. There's been a big response across the nation to this program ending, starting with the U.S. Mayor, the Conference of Mayors. Over 170 mayors signed a letter asking Congress to extend the benefits, put more money to making sure that the ACP keeps on going, including Syracuse Mayor Ben Walsh. You look at some of the reasons why they think they need this. They think it can close the digital divide, help improve the economy for the future if more and more families can have access to the internet. Also in Congress, it's pretty bipartisan support for the ACP. You see both sides of the aisle wanting increased funding, especially on the Democratic side. We saw back in October the new Democratic coalition say that they think this needs to be increased funding immediately. The problem, though, on the Republican side, a couple of holdouts. There was a letter sent by top leadership in both the House and the Senate on the Republican side questioning the effectiveness of the ACP, and that is what is currently holding back the program and why we may see it come to a close in just a couple of short months. So what are the next steps? There's a few questions right now with the ACP. First of all, Charter Communications, over $3 billion of subsidies has gone to them. Any other organization has not gotten more than $1 billion. So there's been some questions about who is getting the subsidies, and then also a couple of pieces of legislation, the White House and House asking for more money. There's just not the support right now, so lots hangs in the balance.
Alex Burstein, thank you. And a first of its kind in our country, Alabama executed a convicted felon using nitrogen gas last week. The new method is the first since 1982 to be used in the United States besides lethal injection. Talking Points analyst Harrison Calder's here now. Harrison, I think a lot of people want to know, how does this exactly work and what does it mean for the future of capital punishment in our country?
Thank you, Ericka. Yeah, on Thursday, the first ever execution in the U.S. using nitrogen hypoxia was carried out. Kenneth Smith, a convicted murderer who's been on death row since 1990, had his execution started at 7:53 and was pronounced dead at 8:25. A mask was put over Smith's face where nitrogen flowed for 15 minutes, and the mask was kept on his face for another 5 minutes after he was presumed dead. The method works by forcing pure nitrogen into the mask while also slowly cutting off the supply of oxygen for the inmate. Nitrogen hypoxia is claimed to be by Alabama's officials as, quote, the most painless and humane method of execution known to man. Though the American Veterinary Medical Association called the method, quote, unacceptable for any animal besides pigs. A lot of these decisions in Alabama regarding the death penalty have made national headlines, some even reaching the White House.
The use of nitrogen gas, of course, it is troubling. It is troubling to us. And so there's been a moratorium from the Attorney General on federal death penalty, a pending review. We need to look into this pending review of the policies and procedures. And so, yes, there's a more broad, obviously, concern of the death penalty, and the president has been very.
The Alabama Supreme Court voted 6-2 in favor of the execution, while the U.S. Supreme Court didn't require a halt to the new method, even with 3 of the judges dissenting. Many now have brought their concerns of this method for not only how it's used, but also how it's still in, quote, experimental stages. The last words of Kenneth Smith were, as you see tonight, Alabama caused humanity to take a step backward. I'm leaving with love, peace, and light. Thank you for supporting me. Love all of you. He said that to his family just before he was killed. And so only 27 states are currently in favor of capital punishment, you see here. And the use of nitrogen hypoxia is still very controversial, even among these states where the death penalty is legal. And out of these 27 states, the only ones that have actually authorized the use of nitrogen hypoxia for executions are Alabama, Oklahoma, and Mississippi. Attorney General Steve Marshall continues to believe that nitrogen hypoxia is the best form of execution and backed that up by saying how 43 inmates besides Smith chose to go with the nitrogen gas as their way to go. These statements were questioned as Associated Press reporter Kim Chandler claims to have witnessed many Alabama executions, but none like this. Chandler stated, the movements exhibited by Smith were not typical for what you see in a normal execution. There was a lot of squirming and a lot of other things going on, and a lot of it is still come for the Supreme Court on this issue. We're going to see a lot more about it regarding the nitrogen hypoxia in the coming days. Ericka, I'm going to send it back to you.
Thanks, Harrison. Coming up on Talking Points, a verdict has been reached in the defamation case between Donald Trump and E. Jean Carroll. We will have the latest in how much the former president will pay in damages.
If you're buzzed and doing this, to make yourself feel okay to drive,
CWX.
you're not okay to drive.
YGKLVW.
You've messed up your son's haircut.
Mom?
Do you A, try to fix it?
Like it never happened.
B, work with what you got? Or C, show solidarity?
Thank you, babe.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Look at you. You're at the top of your game. You're unstoppable. Nothing can throw you off track. Wait, is that your car? Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that coming. That will throw you off track. You're looking at around 10 grand in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Let's try this again. Smart move. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Talking Points. This past week, Donald Trump was found liable for over $80 million in defamatory statements to E. John Carroll. The verdict was the second time over the past year that a jury has awarded Carroll millions of dollars in damages from Trump.
Trump's legal team will immediately appeal the verdict. The former president took to Truth Social saying, "I fully disagree with both verdicts," and I'm quoting here, "and will be appealing this whole Biden-directed witch hunt focused on me and the Republican Party," end quote. The eye-popping sum of money marks the biggest legal setback for the former president, who's now involved in multiple criminal and civil cases while he campaigns for the White House. Ericka, I think this is, again, an interesting one. Something we were kind of talking about before the show, his posts kind of after this. We saw him defiant the last time in the $5 million settlement using her name, but that seemed to kind of go by the wayside. You almost wonder whether his lawyers are kind of telling him here, listen, you gotta watch what you say because you don't want this happening again. And as the money starts to pile up, right? You were talking about in these two legal proceedings, nearly $90 million, plus the legal fees and all this, these other cases, you kind of wonder, is there stuff about, like, is he getting there when it comes to running out of money or potentially?
Well, I don't know, but the thing is, like you said, he didn't mention her name, but he also mentioned a corrupt legal system. So maybe his strategy is changing. Maybe he is taking the time to listen to his lawyers. There's been different trends, obviously, across all the trials, where sometimes he appears to be listening and sometimes he kind of says what is on his mind. But not mentioning her is a big step in what she would probably say is the right direction. But yeah, listening to that and not mentioning Biden as he has been in the past is a different case scenario altogether.
Yeah, and he has opportunities to delay some of those payments too until he exhausts all of his appeals which he intends to follow up on. But to finish our show tonight, we actually go to a story we never thought we'd be covering on Talking Points. According to the New York Times, the Biden administration looking towards an endorsement of Taylor Swift to help in this year's election. Just last year, Swift posted to her 279 million Instagram followers, pleading her fans to sign up to vote. In the aftermath, over 35,000 people registered aiding the Biden campaign.
According to a close ally of President Biden, the commander-in-chief may make an appearance at the Eras Tour to help gain the endorsement. We don't know if this endorsement would help Biden secure re-election, but it is something to keep an eye out on as we move closer to November. This is definitely something I don't think any of us we thought we'd be talking about. No. I mean, I guess it's a step in the right direction, right? There's so much talk about generational changes, right? Since 2020, since that first big election against Trump. Yeah. Maybe he's trying to work towards new messaging. It can't just be, race talk. It can't just be immigrant talk. It can't be all these big buzzer words. Maybe he's trying to figure out ways to actually push himself ahead and distinguish himself.
Well, it almost kind of seems to me, because again, I've been talking about this too, where with the Biden campaign, a couple of weeks ago at the start of the year, it looked like they were going to be very big on this message of democracy, right? After 3 years removed from January 6th, Biden and Valley Forge talking about that, kind of making it a core tenet of his campaign. But also there are a lot of these other issues that I think a lot of people are kind of like resting on their laurels. Are you going to do something for me to show out to vote? And I think the Biden administration is kind of trying to answer some of that with star power, right? There are concerns about climate. There are concerns about student loan debt. especially amongst young people. But you see Biden and his team kind of going to the hits, trying to bring Taylor Swift out potentially, and then also trying to go back. I saw NBC today was talking about a potential fundraiser between Biden, between Bill Clinton, between Barack Obama. So it looks like they're just trying to bring out the hits, bring out the star power, and maybe it will go to help them. People are feeling better about the economy,
That's
though.
the thing. You look at the Supreme Court decisions. Maybe Taylor helps move things in the right direction. You have a whole base of people within women's rights, for young people, with the whole situation with student loans. So it's definitely going to be something to see. We'll see if she helps.
If she does end up if they end up pulling that endorsement, I think it will end up.
And that's all the time we do have to talk about this. We'll see you on the next episode of Talking Points. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and CitrusTV News. I'm Ericka.
And I'm Chilekasi Adele. Good night.